So it's Bricktop versus Fast Car Eddie Hearn for the title of the best promoter in boxing. And if you know anything about these two, they've been going at it for quite a while. So if you're not in the UK and you don't follow boxing here, you may not know that Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren have been basically slagging each other off for more than a decade now. And this weekend in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Excellency, he's done it again. He's absolutely done it again. He's putting on an amazing card where Eddie Hearn takes his 5 best and brightest fighters versus Frank Warren's best and brightest fighters for a showdown to see who is the best promotional outfit in the UK, the world, I don't know. Now, I actually think that Eddie Hearn has the advantage here. I think he's picked better fighters than Frank Warren. I think he has a better stable than Frank Warren. It's more international, of course. So let's run through every fight quickly, and then I'm going to discuss who I think wins in each fight. So you've got Raymond Ford versus Nick Ball for the WBA World Featherweight title. You've got Hamza Shirez versus Austin Williams at middleweight. Then you've got Willie Hutchinson versus Craig Richards at light heavyweight. You've got Daniel Dubois taking on Filip Hrgovic at heavyweight. And Uncle Turkey said, you know what, we're going to shove another heavyweight fight on there with the return of the Bronze Bomber versus Big Bang Zhang. Chinese Power versus Alabama Power. And then you also have Dimitri Bivol versus Malik Zinad, which is a separate fight. It's not part of the 5v5, and I'll talk about that in another video. That was supposed to be Beterbiev. This whole 5v5 card was supposed to be on an undercard of Dimitri Bivol versus Beterbiev. I mean, that's just mental. Like, Uncle Turkey is essentially like us boxing fans, but with just an infinite budget and just can make any card that he wants. You just got to respect him. You really have. So I'm going to go through each fight based on how it's formatted on the actual Matchroom boxing page. So you've got Daniel Dubois versus Filip Hrgovic. Daniel Dubois coming off a brilliant fight against Gerald Big Baby Big Pharmacy Miller. That was quite a grueling fight, to say the least. And a fight that Daniel Dubois absolutely needed to show people that he has got the mentality to get through fights when it's not going his way. There's been accusations thrown at him that he just doesn't have that mentality when the going gets tough. I'm talking about the Joe Joyce fight, where he obviously took a knee, where he was getting absolutely jabbed to death by Big Joe Joyce. And then he also had the fight with Usyk, where he was put down in the 9th round and he didn't get up for the 10 count. And as much as there's been a lot of criticism labelled at Daniel Dubois, there's also been a similar amount aimed at Filip Hrgovic, especially after that Zhang fight, where a lot of fans thought he lost that fight. I don't think it was a robbery by any means. It was a lot more closer than what the bloody judges thought, but how many times do we say that? I just thought Hrgovic's output and his overall activity probably edged him the fight, but I can see an argument as to why that was a close fight. So, in many respects, that fight kind of burst the aura and the kind of reputation that Filip Hrgovic once had. Don't get me wrong, he's a very dangerous fighter, and I'm picking him to actually win this fight by knockout against Dubois. There's my prediction. Saying it with chest, probably going to get it wrong because I'm absolutely shit at predictions. That's why I'm not a betting man, thank God. Although I think Hrgovic wins this fight, I think we should respect Daniel Dubois for a fighter who's only 26. He's already fought Joe Joyce, Trevor Bryan. I know people don't rate Trevor Bryan, but still a very experienced fighter. Alexander Usyk, Jarrell Miller, and now Hrgovic. I mean, that's quite impressive for a 26-year-old. Now, when I mentioned earlier about the mentality of Dubois being in question, it's going to be questioned quite a lot in this fight. I see in round 10 or 11, if Hrgovic hasn't blown his gas tank by then, he'll stop Dubois. I think the output would just be too much, and that'll be 1-0 for Eddie Hearn. Also, there is a slim chance that the IBF belt could be on the line for this fight. I mentioned in a video a few weeks ago that Usyk will be stripped. I think since that video, I think Usyk has said that he wants to work with the IBF so he can have that belt on the line for the undisputed fight with Tyson Fury. Now on to a much easier fight to predict, Craig Richards versus Willie Hutchinson. Now when I think of Willie Hutchinson, I can only think of that Lennox Clark performance because it's just ingrained into my mind. If you don't remember that fight, Lennox Clark sent Willie to the Shadow Realm in round 5. Since then, Willie Hutchinson's had 4 fights on the comeback trail. Very low-key fights in Telford and the York Hall. But in fairness to Willie, he has stopped all 4 of his opponents. And he's still only 25, which is quite surprising to be fair. I thought he'd be a lot older than that. Now, this is a huge step up for Willie Hutchinson. If you look at the opponents that Craig Richards has fought, the experience that he has, I mean, he's fought guys like Dimitri Bivol, Joshua Buatsi, and cleaned up domestically, beating Shakan Pitters for the British title. So he's a lot more accomplished than Willie Hutchinson, but of course he is. He's 34, He's coming to the end of his career. In my opinion, this is a step too far for Willie Hutchinson. I think the experience and the operators that Craig Richards has shared the ring with, it'd just be too much for him, and I think Craig Richards will stop Willie Hutchinson in the mid to late rounds. So not a great start for old Frankie boy in my predictions. That's 2-0 to Eddie Hearn. Then we have Queensbury's Hamza Shirez versus Matchroom's Austin Williams. Last time out, Hamza Shirez took on Liam Williams in the copper box. A fight that I made a video on a few months ago, and it was a hard one to even dissect because Liam Williams' punch resistance was so shot beyond belief that no one could have foreseen that. No one could have foreseen his punch resistance being that terrible. Obviously, we know Hamza Shirez has got heavy hands. He's a massive guy for the weight, 6'3", and he's going to want to use those long levers effectively to beat Austin Williams on Saturday. For someone so young, only 25, Hamza Shirez became European champion in only his 10th fight. And this has got a lot riding for Frank Warren specifically. Obviously Eddie Hearn as well, but this is really Frank Warren's boy, the one that he believes will be the future of British boxing. And he's certainly living up to that hype, with 15 of his 19 wins coming by KO. Now, because he's long and lanky, and he's in a weight division where he towers over people, there's instant comparisons to Tommy Hearns, and I'm not going to entertain them. He doesn't fight anything like Tommy Hearns. He doesn't use his size as well. He's not as coordinated. His jab isn't as dynamic as Tommy Hearns. He's nothing alike. But he's a very promising fighter, only 25, accomplished so much already. He's got a good footwork, a good jab, and what I like about him is he's got a strong presence in the ring as well. Now let's move on to Austin Ammo Williams, who has had a bit of a slower trajectory than Hamza Shirez. He's 28. He's only recently fought for a regional belt back in 2023 when he fought Steve Rolls. He had a solid win last time out against Armel Yasser on the undercard of Conor Benn in Las Vegas. He ended Yasser with a beautiful left hand that stopped the fight. And he's a very well-schooled fighter with very good movement, feints, footwork, body shots. And what really sticks out for me personally with Ammo Williams is he's very athletic as well. The height and reach is obviously going to be a disadvantage when facing someone like Hamza Shirez, who's so massive. But if he can use that athleticism and that speed advantage to get on the inside, throw his shots, potentially there's a chance they can win this. But I'm actually picking Hamza Shirez to win this one on points. Then we move on to Raymond Ford, who defends his WBA World Featherweight title against Nick Bull. Now let's talk about Nick Bull first. I've actually watched him live at Wembley on the undercard of Fury vs. White, where he was taking on Isaac Lowe, who's basically Tyson Fury's mate, and he absolutely demolished him, stopping Isaac Lowe in round 6. And after that fight, I just became a fan of him because he is essentially a human pit bull. He's absolutely relentless, just doesn't stop coming forward. In my opinion, Nick Bull should be the WBC World Featherweight Champion right now because in his last outing against Ray Vargas, where he got a split decision draw, he managed to put Ray Vargas down in multiple rounds, which is massively impressive. If you look at the size difference between the two, I mean, Nick Bull is always staring up into the clouds when it comes to his opponents. He's only 5'2", but it just shows for such a small guy, he's got serious power. Raymond Ford is coming off a Rocky-style win against Otabek Kolmatov to win his WBA World Championship. What a fight that was. That is a potential fight of the year. And that was only a few months ago as well, which is good to see the activity. And in the last 10 seconds of that fight, he had Kolmatov running for his life as he stops him in, I think he had like 9 seconds to go or something. Absolutely insane ending to what was an insane fight. And I think these styles really match up well. They're both very aggressive fighters, Raymond Ford and Nick Bull. They've got that aggression in them naturally. And there's no question Raymond Ford's heart. I mean, he has got an absolute heart of a lion, a real champion, and absolutely deserved that belt. Like, when you see a fighter want to win as bad as Raymond Ford did in the last round of that fight, you can just never doubt him, and that's why I'm not doubting him in this fight against Nick Bull. I think overall he is the better fighter. I think Nick Bull is world championship material. Like I said, he should be a world champion. I'm not saying the fight against Vargas was a robbery by any means. It was, close enough fight. But I thought that Nick Bull won that fight. I think where Nick Bull has got a good plan A, he doesn't really have a plan B. I think he's very much a one-dimensional fighter. If it doesn't go his way, I think he's going to struggle. And I think Raymond Ford will take him out. It's no secret, Nick Bull's even said in interviews, he's going to try and knock out Raymond Ford. And I think in trying to do that, he's going to get caught, and I think Raymond Ford takes him out, probably mid to late rounds. Then we have the best fight on the card by an absolute country mile, and that is not discrediting any fight on the undercard because it is An amazing card, this. But Deontay Wilder versus Zhang, however you want to pronounce it. Alabama Power versus Chinese Power. You really can't beat it, can you? And I really have no idea what Deontay Wilder is going to turn up on the weekend. From the interviews that I've been seeing, and I've been watching a ton of Deontay Wilder interviews this week, his demeanour is really good in my opinion. He says he wants to be undisputed. He says that money is not providing him happiness, which is a great mentality to have. When we're questioning what is Wilder still doing in the game, what is he trying to achieve, well, he still wants to go for the belts, and I like that attitude from Wilder. It's clear that he's still got some fire there. He said that the fans want the Bronze Bomber back because he didn't show that against Parker, and he really didn't. The whole fight week, build-up, he was not that loud, brash character that we're used to seeing. It was almost very passive, to be honest, very unusual from Wilder. And although I didn't like the comments that he made at the time, where he said, I want a body on my record, that's the kind of mentality that he needs to bring back. And I'm not advocating for people to say that kind of stuff. It's not a good look. Trust me when I say this, many fighters who enter the ring have those intentions. Because when you speak like that and you think like that, it brings a level of aggression and attitude that you need to bring into a ring. This is not playing golf, this is not playing netball, this is another human being trying to inflict as much damage to you as possible. So he needs to have that mentality, that absolute, I'm going to send you into the shadow realm, Bronze Bomber mentality, and I hope to see that back. But it's whether he can at this stage, at 38 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's been way too inactive in my opinion. And he's going up against Zhang, who is absolutely full of confidence after those two Joe Joyce fights. Probably the Hrgovic fight as well, where that was a very close fight. Essentially having a late coming out party at the ripe old age of 41. Now the Parker defeat was no disgrace. He put Parker down in multiple rounds. What was a bit odd though is he didn't apply the pressure afterwards. I felt like he just let Parker off multiple times in this fight. I just think the overall output of Zhang really let him down in that fight, and that ultimately lost him the fight. Too many times in that fight he just took a round off essentially. Now contrast that with Deontay Wilder's last performance, in which I thought that was probably the worst performance I've ever seen from Deontay Wilder. Genuinely awful. Now I have to admit, I thought Deontay Wilder was going to KO Joseph Parker in this fight. I thought Parker was done after that Joyce fight. I think a lot of people did, to be fair. And then his comeback fights weren't very impressive either. But what was completely absent in this fight from Deontay Wilder's perspective was that ferocity. It was almost like someone has sent a completely different fighter to this fight week. His demeanour, everything's changed. I don't know if it's that drug experience that he had and his mentality's just completely switched, but he was just totally different. He didn't even want to really go for the fight until the 11th or 12th round. He was it was just a strange performance from Wilder. Now, some people might bring up the age factor, which is fair enough. He is 38. Also, the fact that he's had two extremely hard fights with Tyson Fury, where he got knocked out in both of them. And that third one in particular, I mean, Wilder put absolutely everything into that fight. It was an absolute war. I mean, he put Fury down multiple times. It still wasn't enough, and he eventually got chinned in round 12. Now, this fight with Wilder and Zhang is the battle of the hardest punchers in the division, in my opinion. Zhang has got to be at least top 5 hardest punchers in the division, with Wilder obviously being number 1. So it's probably not a hot take to say this ends in a KO. Yeah, I know. That's a big, bold statement for me. Zhang is a southpaw, and we know Wilder does struggle with southpaws, or anybody who actually knows how to box, like Joseph Parker. I think Zhang's best bet is to try get Wilder out there early. We know Wilder carries his power into the later rounds, but in my opinion, Deontay Wilder comes back victorious and KOs Zhang in probably round 8 or 9. If Deontay Wilder can survive the early rounds with Zhang, the output would be a lot lower. Zhang will probably take rounds off. I think that's when Deontay Wilder catches him and ultimately wins the 5v5 for Matchroom and saves his career, which is quite important as well. But there you go. Let me know who you think is going to win in these fights. How do you think they'll play out? I've probably got all my predictions wrong. That's why I don't bet. But anyway, this is a great card. I'm looking forward to it.